Hi, my name is Paul Madalonic, and it's my pleasure to present this analysis of LDT 200X Instructional Design and Technology, Instructional Design Models. This is a massive open online course on the EDX platform, and the course explores how learning theory and motivation can be applied to the instructional process. The course that I'm analyzing for further consideration has Doug Burtek, PhD, and Denise Dix as course facilitators. This is an edition of the course prior to the latest run of this course. Now, this presentation is going to go through an explanation of the scorecard that I used, the QCTIP, 3 effective areas, 3 areas requiring improvement, a discussion, and a conclusion. The Quality Course Teaching and Instructional Practice Scorecard is a comprehensive scorecard which can be used for an in-depth review to validate instructional practices as compared to quality standards identified by a panel of experts. The scorecard is sponsored by the Online Learning Consortium. They're dedicated to advancing quality digital teaching and learning experiences, and they're designed to reach and engage the modern learner. It goes through many areas, including course fundamentals, learning foundations, etc. So the 3 effective areas. The first effective area that I chose was course design. I rated exemplary in all areas of course design. I felt like the course was cohesive and aligns the course objectives, assessments, and activities. It is consistent and very clearly identified and easy to access. Another area was course learning outcomes. The course learning outcomes were clearly defined and measurable. There are clear links between learning objectives and outcomes with activities and assessments. Course learning outcomes are related to the appropriate level of learning, and assignments. And assignments, I thought, was very well thought out. The assignments were directly related to the course, lecture, learning objectives. They were meaningful and relevant to learning outcomes, and they included grading rubrics with clear expectations. Let's take an actual look at the EDX course online and see how course design, course learning outcomes, and the assignments align to create a great learning experience. As I log into the EDX site and find my dashboard, I'll find my course that is the subject of this presentation, and here it is right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. And here we are, the instructional design course. As you see, there are 8 weeks, each very clearly defined, and students see exactly what they are going to do week by week. So this allows students to plan ahead. This is great. The module exemplifies every module in the course. The learning outcomes are displayed in the first screen. So let's open this stick and carry model and show you that. Overview and objectives, so students are able to see that. And every week is organized the same way with a lecture, reading support materials, activity, knowledge check. It is great that way. Now, another part that I felt was very strong, of course, not only the design, but the learning outcomes. Very clearly defined, as you see here. Overview and objectives. I'll go ahead and open this. And as you see, every terminal objective in this particular lesson is clearly written and defined, so students have a goal and they can actually align that with the syllabus. And the syllabus is where the learning outcomes are very defined. Analyze contributions of selected learning, describe the basic components within various motivational theories, and so on. But the third one, select appropriate principles derived from given theories and apply those within practical learning situation, is very aligned with the assignments of this particular course. As you see, as I go back to the course itself, and I go back to week 3 and I see the activity, there was a podcast assigned for this particular week. And that is a skill that instructional designers will use. So again, very aligned with the learning outcomes that were predisposed for this course. So, what is important about all this? Well, in a study that I've done a little research, and I found a study where students were asked if they preferred online courses to follow a consistent structure, and of course, approximately 92% of the students queried agreed that a common structure across all online courses would be helpful for them. So it follows that consistency is ranked exemplary on the QCTIP scorecard. And course learning outcomes in the same study comparing the responses of online students, 93.7 agrees or strongly agree that organization and structure is necessary in an online course. And assignments. One important aspect of teaching is the process of learning by doing. For example, the Dick and Carey model assignment had students create a podcast to explain the model. Learners have the opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge of the Dick and Carey model, and it also gives the learner the opportunity to gain some experience podcasting, which likely is a useful tool in the working world. So let's talk about the 3 areas requiring improvement. Well, first of all, let's talk about instructor building community.
Hi everybody, this is Doug Burtek. I will be your instructor for the RDT 200 course when the edX.
Hi, that was Doug Burtek, and this category on the QCTIP scorecard is an accomplished area on the most part. There is no survey available measuring the idea of community for the course, thus my conclusion is made on the basis of a review of the discussion areas. Based on this qualitative data, the instructor very much engaged with students to encourage participation in discussion boards, and even provided a welcome video for participants. So I rated the instructor exemplary in many areas, including providing meaningful communication, modeling effective communication techniques, and having a positive, supportive tone in all communication. But in other criteria in this category, there did not seem to be enough evidence to rate the effort exemplary. The QCTIP goes for more. So another area, instructor communicating. The instructors of this course practice solid principles of good teaching. Dr. Burtek and Denise Dix encouraged contact between students and faculty. They developed reciprocity and gave prompt feedback. The QCTIP Q-tip scorecard goes for more. And class discussion engagement. It's clear that the instructors of the course followed principles for good teaching. And on the most part, I rated the instructors exemplary in most criteria in this category. However, the QCTIP goes for more. And what do I mean by that? Here's what I mean. Keep in mind that we are using Q-tip criteria to make these subjective judgments in these categories. Some questions were students are expected to post discussion responses as well as interact with classmates and instructor. Class discussion boards are designed to facilitate student-to-student interactions. I just didn't see that much evidence of these kinds of activities. The Q-tip asked regarding with the instructor communicating. Missing were clear guidelines for interaction with the students and well-designed discussion assignments that facilitated meaningful cooperation among students. As stated before, many students were left on their own and other students enjoyed a fair amount of feedback. Yes, indeed, the class discussions that I've observed in LDD2X could have been more encouraging for critical thinking, for example. However, I am saying these things with full knowledge that hindsight is often sharper than the moment. The question remains whether a MOOC course has the same objective as a traditional college course. Let's go to the MOOC course. I'm back here to our course, Instructional Design Models, and looking at the lesson plan here. I'm just going to choose any of them. Let's go into week 4 and find out what we have in terms of discussion. Remember, instruction, building community, instructor communicating, and class discussion and engagement are the opportunities that I believe exist in a MOOC course such as this. So as you recall, each of these modules are pretty consistent. So there's not very much, in this particular course, there's not that much discussion going on. There is activity here. And in activity, the scenario requires a student to submit their assignment. And as you see here in the discussion area, some students receive 1 or 2 comments from students and instructors. Others, we have 7 comments, we have 10 comments here. So some students get little feedback, and then other students get much more. So it is an interesting situation that occurs between students on creating community and communicating. Now, as I pointed out, the QCTIP is very subjective in terms of what the instructor does, and there are so many good teaching moments that I found in these discussion boards with the instructor. However, I just felt as though there was not enough, and that this area could have been done a little better. So what's important about this? Well, in a study, over 90% of students online agreed or strongly agreed that interaction between the students and the instructor were essential in online learning. So after reading the discussion boards, I could not, in good conscience, rate the interaction between the students and instructor as exemplary in areas of providing activities that foster student interaction or expectations are communicated for participation, etc. Because I recognize that some students had very little response, while others seemed to attract more attention from the students and the teachers. But the principles of good teaching were evident. Encouraging contact between students, develop reciprocity, active learning techniques, prompt feedback, time on task, communicates high expectations, respect diverse talents, emphasizes professionalism. There are 3 effective areas identified and 3 areas noted for improvement in LDD 200X. The primary area for improvement is the area of class discussion and engagement. The QTIP set of criteria fits into the idea of building a learning community. The MOOC clearly is designed for students to work independently on learning projects against weekly due dates prescribed by the course. There are no explicit requirements to engage thoughtfully in the discussions or to provide feedback or work presented by other students. So some students received a fair amount of feedbacks from other students, while other students may have been left out with little to no feedback. Since there are only 2 instructors known for the MOOC, then it is reasonable to assume that limitations of time and resources exist toward serving every student that is participating. So the question remains, what to do with this qualitative data? How does this affect the metrics of the course? If the focus moves on community engagement, would there be a higher pass rate for the course if the appropriate interventions were created? These are some of the questions that would have to be considered. What would those interventions be? This process, however, is part of the learning analytics cycle that we should be engaging with any course such as this. So some ideas for research include the ideas that engaged students will get what they need to be successful, but other students could become discouraged from proceeding in the course further if they're not part of a community. Are there differences between users of a MOOC product versus users of a traditional college course? I believe that these differences should be studied and considered while making evaluations with the QTIP scorecard. MOOCs might be impacted by the time and manpower constraints of a small team facing a large learning body if encouraging student engagement and critical thinking is an important evaluation point. So the question remains whether a new scorecard should be created for MOOC products. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you enjoy some of the thoughts that I've inspired.